You know that feeling, right? You wake up on like a random Tuesday and there's just this strange, unexplained ache in your lower back.
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe it's a sudden, overwhelming wave of fatigue that just hits you out of nowhere. And what's the very first thing you do?
You grab your phone?
Exactly. If you're like most people, you reach for your phone, you open up a search engine, and you type in your symptoms.
Yeah, we all do it.
And then within about 30 seconds, you've completely convinced yourself that you have some, incredibly rare terminal illness. It's terrifying. You go from a slight cough to planning your own funeral before you've even had your morning coffee.
The panicked morning symptom search is basically a universal modern experience at this point.
It really is.
We seek out that information because, well, we want comfort, but we usually just end up with a ton of anxiety. And the reason for that is pretty simple. I mean, search engines aren't doctors.
Right.
They're just pattern matchers throwing the most clicked and often the most extreme results right back at you.
Which is exactly why we're here today. Because today we're looking at something that could, well, completely change that morning panic. We're doing a deep dive into a major news study from Google Research outlining this investigational AI system called SymptomAI.
Yeah, this is a fascinating one.
The mission for our deep dive today is to explore what happens when an AI agent is actually deployed in the real world, like to everyday people, to diagnose their symptoms.
Right, getting out of the lab.
Exactly. How does it compare to human doctors?
Yeah.
And, perhaps most wildly, what are the mind-blowing things that happen when you combine an AI symptom checker with the continuous data streaming from your smartwatch?
So to set the stage for why this is so critical, I want to point you to page 2, specifically section 1, which is the introduction of the study.
Okay, what do they say there?
Well, the researchers note that up to 1 in 5 conversational AI queries already relate to medical knowledge.
Wait, 1 in 5?
Yeah. People are already doing this every single day. They're asking chatbots what's wrong with them. But traditional online symptom checkers have historically been, frankly, quite poor.
I mean, I believe that.
Right. The study notes their diagnostic accuracies hover somewhere between 20 and 40%.
That's barely better than a random guess sometimes.
Exactly. So to see if they could do better, the researchers didn't just test this SymptomAI thing in a sterile lab. They deployed it to 13,917 Fitbit users in a naturalistic setting.
So real people.
Real people reporting real symptoms as they actually experience them in their daily lives.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before an AI, or, a human doctor for that matter, can diagnose you, it has to figure out what's actually wrong. It has to gather the clues.
Right, the medical interview.
Yeah, and that brings up a really interesting design question. How should an AI get that information from you? Should it just let you type out a massive paragraph venting about how you feel? Or should it act more like a detective and actively interrogate you?
That is the core question. And the researchers actually graphed the answer to that. If we look at section 2.1, figure 2C, which looks at accuracy by prompt strategy, they break this down perfectly.
Oh, awesome. What did they find?
Well, they divided the users and tested 5 different prompting strategies on the AI. The first was what they called the base model.
And what's that?
That's essentially what you get if you just open a standard chatbot today. The AI was told to stick to medical topics, but otherwise it just let the user guide the entire conversation.
Okay, so the user types whatever they want, and the AI just guesses based on that.
Exactly. It's passive.
It's sort of the digital equivalent of just letting a patient ramble in the waiting room without asking them any questions.
Yeah, exactly. But then they tested what they call agentic strategies, where the AI actually takes the wheel.
Interesting.
They tried canonical strategies, where the AI was explicitly instructed to ask classic medical history questions. Things like onset, location, severity, what makes the pain better or worse.
So a standard doctor checklist.
Right. But they also tried dynamic strategies. And under the dynamic model, the AI had total freedom to ask whatever follow-up questions it felt were necessary to narrow down the diagnosis, completely based on the user's previous answers.
I can imagine how different that looks in practice. Like, under the base model, someone just types, "my stomach hurts," and the AI takes a blind guess.
Yeah.
Under the canonical model, it runs down a rigid checklist. But under the dynamic model, it might hear, "my stomach hurts," and suddenly ask, "Hey, have you also noticed any unusual rashes on your legs?"
Exactly. It's hunting for those weird, obscure correlations.
So how did the dynamic hunting perform against the passive rambling?
The results were staggering. Figure 2C shows that the agentic strategies, so the ones where the AI actively interviewed the patient and dynamically asked follow-up questions, they resulted in an average 27.34% higher accuracy compared to the base user-guided model.
Wow, 27% higher.
It wasn't even close. The AI needs to drive the conversation to be accurate.
That makes so much sense if you think about it like playing the game 20 questions.
Oh, how so?
Well, if I'm thinking of an object and I just let you ramble and guess randomly without asking me anything structured, we could be there all day. You might focus on totally useless clues.
That's very true.
But if you play like a strategic detective asking, Is it bigger than a bread box? Is it alive? Is it made of metal? You narrow down the universe of possibilities incredibly fast. You're forcing the context to become highly specific.
That's a great analogy. Taking that 20 questions concept into the medical world, that process of narrowing down is called building a differential diagnosis.
Right.
And what this data proves is that an AI needs to be an active participant. It needs to elicit information that a layperson wouldn't even think to mention.
Because we don't know what's relevant.
Exactly. You might complain about a headache to the app, but you probably won't think to mention that your vision has been slightly blurry or that your jaw hurts when you chew.
Oh yeah, I would never link jaw pain to a headache.
But the AI has to know to ask those specific things to rule out something serious like temporal arteritis.
So the takeaway here for you listening, if you're pulling up one of these health AIs at home, don't just dump a paragraph of symptoms into the chat box and expect a miracle answer.
No, definitely not.
You actually want the AI to interview you. If it's just passively agreeing with you, it's not doing the hard work. You want it asking you those breadbox questions to get to the truth.
Exactly. But, the interview is just the foundation. Gathering the clues is only half the battle.
Right. You have to actually solve the case.
The real test is what you do with those clues. How does the system actually perform when it comes time to make the final diagnosis? And more importantly, how does it compare to human experts?
The ultimate showdown. AI versus the doctor. Let's get into it.
All right. To see this showdown, we need to turn to section 2.2 and look at figure 2A, which is the clinician ranking distribution. And then right next to it, section 2.3, figure 2B, showing the overall top 5 accuracy.
Okay, got it. How did they set this test up?
The researchers took a cohort of 517 cases from the study. Now, these were cases where the patient eventually got a confirmed diagnosis from a real-world healthcare provider.
So they had an absolute correct answer to check against.
Yes. They took the text transcripts of these patient interviews, the chats with the AI, and gave them to a panel of expert, board-certified clinicians. They asked these human doctors to generate their own list of possible diagnoses based purely on the chat logs.
Okay, so we have a list of guesses from the AI and a list of guesses from human doctors, all based on the exact same text conversation with the patient.
Yes. And then they brought in another independent clinical rater.
Like a judge.
Exactly. And this rater was completely blinded. They didn't know which list came from the AI and which came from the human doctors. They just looked at the lists and ranked them based on clinical accuracy and quality.
Oh, wow. What did the judges say?
The stunning result here is that the expert raters preferred SymptomAI's list over the human doctor's list in over 50% of the cases.
Wait. Over half the time, the human expert looked at the two lists, said, this one is better, and it turned out to be the AI.
Yes. The statistics show an odds ratio of 2.20 with a p-value of less than 0.001.
Wow.
Simply put, the raters were more than twice as likely to choose the AI's diagnosis as the best option over chance. Furthermore, if you look at figure 2B, it shows that SymptomAI demonstrated a significantly higher top 5 accuracy than the clinicians overall.
They didn't get to look the patient in the eye. They couldn't read body language. They couldn't see if the patient was sweating or wincing in pain. They couldn't hear, the rasp in their breathing.
That's true.
And maybe most importantly, they didn't get to ask their own specific follow-up questions. They were completely handcuffed to the AI's conversation. Doesn't that severely handicap the human doctors in this comparison?
It's a completely valid critique, and it's vital for critical thinking here. You're right, clinical diagnosis is a highly nuanced art.
Right.
A physician walking into an exam room gathers 100 subtle clues before they even say hello. Smelling a specific odor on a patient's breath, noticing their skin tone, how they walk. All of that is lost in a text transcript.
Exactly.
So this isn't a comparison of an AI versus a doctor in a physical clinic. It's a comparison of an AI versus a doctor performing asynchronous digital triage based entirely on text.
That feels like a crucial distinction to make.
Yeah.
We're testing doctors in an environment that literally strips away half their tools.
We are. However, let's look at section 2.4 and figure 2F, which addresses this exact tension.
Oh, they looked into that.
Yes. This figure looks at diagnostic accuracy stratified by how confident the clinicians felt about the text conversation.
Okay, so breaking it down by how much the doctors trusted the chat log.
Exactly. And while the human doctors in SymptomAI performed similarly well on cases where the doctors felt highly confident, SymptomAI significantly outperformed the clinicians on the low information conversations.
Low information meaning what?
The cases where the doctors felt unconfident or neutral because the text lacked detail, the AI crushed them there.
That's fascinating. Why is the AI so much better when the clues are sparse or vague? Because human doctors clearly struggled there, but the AI held strong.
It comes down to how human cognition works versus how a large language model works.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, humans suffer from cognitive fatigue and anchoring bias. A human doctor reading a vague text log that just says, headache and fatigue at the end of a 12-hour shift, might unconsciously anchor to migraine and just stop thinking creatively.
Because they're tired.
Right. The AI doesn't get tired. It systematically holds a massive, unweighted web of mathematical probabilities in its context. That's a fair point.
You might be more health conscious. Maybe you have a higher baseline health literacy. Like you have a better vocabulary for describing your symptoms than the average person.
Sure.
So does this AI actually work for the general public or just for like Silicon Valley biohackers?
Whenever you're looking at a study deployed on a specific tech platform, you always have to ask about selection bias. It's a great question. And to answer it, we turn to Section 2.5 and Table 1, the study demographics.
Okay, did they control for that?
They did. The researchers recognized this potential bias, so to prove that the system works broadly, they didn't just rely on the Fitbit data. They ran an entirely separate auxiliary study using a general U.S. population panel of 1,509 people.
Oh, nice. So a completely different group to act as a reality check.
Exactly. Table 1 outlines a completely different demographic breakdown for this new group. Different ages, different education levels, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and fundamentally a totally different distribution of illnesses reported.
So a real slice of America.
Yes. This group was representative of a broader cross-section of the country. They put this new group through the same chat process, and an automated rater verified the results.
And how did the AI do with them?
Despite the entirely different demographic and illness profile, SymptomAI still hit an impressive 75.2% top 5 accuracy in this general population group.
Okay, wait, what was it in the original Fitbit group?
It was 80.0% in the Fitbit group.
Okay, so a slight drop.
We see a slight dip, which makes sense given the potential for the Fitbit users to be slightly more attuned to their health metrics, sure. But 75.2% is still phenomenally high, especially considering traditional web symptom checkers sit around 20 to 40%.
Yeah, that's almost double the traditional accuracy. That means this tech isn't just a toy for early adopters. It's robust.
Absolutely.
It's capable of parsing the way a typical person, not just a health nerd, describes their stomach ache. And it can still arrive at a highly accurate clinical conclusion. It's getting ready for prime time for everyone.
So we've established that if you go to this AI with a symptom, it's remarkably good at figuring out what's wrong. But, everything we've talked about so far requires you to make the first move.
Right, I have to open the app.
You have to realize you feel sick, open the app, and type something in. But what if we could remove that human delay entirely?
Wait, how would we do that?
Let's look at the final section of this study, which introduces something that borders on science fiction. What happens when we zoom out and look at the physical data happening in your body in the days before you decide to complain to the AI?
Oh, because these 13,000 people were wearing Fitbits. The researchers didn't just have their chat logs. They had their continuous biological data running in the background.
Bingo. We need to look at Section 2.6, specifically Figure 3, which is the phenome-wide association study, and Figure 5.
Okay, looking at those now.
Because the AI was able to generate highly accurate diagnoses at a massive scale, the researchers could use those AI diagnoses as labels. They took all 13,917 participants and analyzed over 500,000 days of wearable biosignals leading up to the exact moments those people initiated a chat.
500,000 days of, heartbeats, sleep cycles, and breathing rates. That's a staggering amount of data.
It is. And what they found were massive physiological shifts aligning perfectly with the onset of acute respiratory infections, like influenza or COVID-19, in the days leading up to the user actually chatting with the AI.
Wait, days before?
Days before. We're talking about changes in resting heart rate, drops in heart rate variability, and increases in wake minutes during sleep. For influenza, the odds ratio of these biosignal shifts occurring before the symptom report was greater than 7.
Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this. The data showed that the person's body was visibly reacting on a biometric level, like their heart rate was changing, days before they consciously realized, hey, I feel sick enough to ask an AI what's wrong with me.
Yes. Figure 5 illustrates that perfectly. The biosignals begin to deviate from the user's personal baseline days before day 0, which is the day they actually felt bad enough to report the symptoms.
This is exactly like a car's check engine light.
How so?
Well, right now, the way we do healthcare is we wait until we hear the engine sputtering, or we see smoke pouring out from under the hood. The smoke is the symptom, right? The cough, the fever.
Right.
And when we see the smoke, we go to the mechanic. We go to the doctor. But modern cars have internal computers checking the tire pressure and the oil viscosity constantly.
Yeah.
The wearable data is that internal computer. It's sensing the pressure dropping on a microscopic level days before you ever hear a noise or see any smoke.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
Yeah.
Taking that car analogy further, let's look at the biology of heart rate variability, or HRV.
What exactly is that?
It isn't just your heart rate. It's the microsecond variations in time between your heartbeats, and it's controlled by your autonomic nervous system. When your body detects a virus starting to replicate, even before it triggers a fever to fight it, your system kicks into a low-grade stress response. Your fight-or-flight sympathetic nervous system ramps up, and your HRV plummets.
But I don't feel that happening.
No, you can't feel your HRV dropping. It's entirely imperceptible to you.
But the watch feels it.
The watch feels it. Because it can detect these shifts before you consciously feel sick, this paves the way for a radical shift toward proactive healthcare.
Oh, man.
Imagine a scenario where your smartwatch notices a persistent drop in your HRV and an elevation in your resting heart rate over a 48-hour period. Instead of waiting for you to feel awful and search your symptoms, the watch prompts the AI to check in on you.
It reaches out to me.
Right, sends a notification. I've noticed some changes in your vitals over the last 2 days. Are you experiencing a scratchy throat or any unusual fatigue?
That's wild. It's preemptive triage.
Think of the public health implications of that. If the AI can catch an influenza infection 2 days before the person feels sick enough to stay home from work, it could recommend early isolation or early antiviral treatment. We could literally break the chain of transmission for infectious diseases simply by moving the diagnostic window forward by 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's take a breath and recap this journey, because we've covered a lot of ground today.
You really have.
We started by looking at how AI is moving away from being a passive, dumb search engine. It's evolving into an active medical interviewer. We saw that when you give it agency to ask follow-up questions, its accuracy skyrockets because it knows how to build a differential diagnosis.
Right.
Then we looked at the blinded tests and saw that in text-based digital triage, this AI is actually rivaling, and in some cases beating, the diagnostic accuracy of expert human clinicians, particularly when the information is sparse and human cognitive biases start to creep in.
Exactly.
We confirmed that this isn't just a fluke for health-obsessed tech wearers. The tech holds up across the general population. And finally, we saw the Holy Grail. When you pair that diagnostic brain with the continuous physical data from our wearables, we're looking at the ability to see sickness coming before we even feel it. It might change how we experience the onset of illness entirely.
It's a true paradigm shift. We're moving from a system of reactive sick care to proactive healthcare, driven by continuous beta and highly capable reasoning engines.
It really makes that morning panic search feel a bit outdated, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And it leaves us with an important question for you to consider as we wrap up our deep dive today. We started by talking about the anxiety of waking up with an unexplained ache and consulting the internet. But based on what we've seen in this study, we're heading toward a future where the internet consults you.
That's a crazy thought.
Right. If our wearable devices can detect an impending illness days before we consciously feel sick, and an AI is standing by, ready and proven to be an expert interviewer, how long will it be until the AI initiates the doctor's appointment for you?
Wow.
And more importantly, the next time you wake up feeling completely fine, are you ready to get a text from your smartwatch saying, "I've reviewed your heart rate data from last night, and I think we need to talk about your throat"?